Oh. That's right. Get on up. Get up on there. Just stab him right through the back. Now stab him. Yeah, there we go. Like that. No, there we go. Now he's good and dead. Ix, the central computer, the machine that decided the future of the human race, was controlled by Astaroth. Alright, so this is Ix. We've read a lot about it, but I guess, oh, there's like a face? Is that the computer's face? And why is there like so much on fire? Was it destroyed? Was Astaroth issuing the commands that were coming from Ix the whole time? Because the revolution is over. The awakened ones have achieved their goal. They have destroyed the machine that governed them. From now on, the human race will be free to choose its destiny. Wait, so was Ix destroyed the whole time? Because it was like on fire. I'm not really sure. The palace is ruined. The fighting must have been terrible. Wait, what? What palace? What fighting we talking about? Where is this? Reshef's private apartment. He certainly looked after himself. Oh, okay. This is the palace of Reshef, who is the leader of the government. Was there like a revolution going on while we were doing our thing? All his wealth is no good to him now. Alright, he was killed off camera. By the Awakened? Was that happening? I don't think anyone mentioned to us that there was going to be a revolution while we were off fighting Astaroth, but I guess that's what was happening. Oh, hey, look, it's everyone's here! Boz, that Jenna, that one guy who gave us rings before the first-person segments. Who is that guy? Yeah, there he is. Who is that guy? I'm glad that Boz was able to take the time to come out of his computer to come talk to us.
This is the last time I will use my magic rings to teleport you. Now you will no longer need my help.
Who are you? You never said what your name was. You just kind of appeared and you gave me checkpoints during first-person segment. Are you God? I'm not sure about this, but I'm suspecting that you might be God. Who are you, old man?
I am the renegade sorcerer, Matanbukus, author of the Book of Naut. Thousands of years ago, humans sullied my name, believing I was too cowardly to place my soul in the blade of Barkayal with the other sorcerers. I sacrificed my honor to save the life of my daughter, Soyinka.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember your name now. I thought Matambakus was like the head that came out of the book when I spoke to the book. But no, you're actually still alive, okay. Thanks for your assistance, Matambakus.
I could not leave you at the mercy of the demons. I used my magic to help you vanquish Astaroth. Now my brother sorcerers are free. I will be able to explain to them and regain my honor. Thank you, Nomad soul.
Oh, your brother sorcerers, that's right, they were in the sword. I killed Astaroth, so they went on to, like, the realm of the dead or whatever. Like, they're not alive, right? They're still dead. Are you dead? I'm not. I guess from my perspective, it doesn't really matter. That doesn't have to do with me. I just fulfilled my part, and your status of whether or not you're alive or dead, I guess is not really relevant to my own situation. But thank you anyway.
You have brought back my father and restored his honor. Words cannot express my gratitude. The Azkeels have regained their pride. They fought valiantly with the humans to free Omikron, and now they are regarded as brothers, not as animals. Thank you for all you have done for my people.
I'm glad that the Azkeel now stand side to side with humans as equals, even though I was not aware of their plight for the entire game until like right at the very end when I first saw them. Like that actually was not mentioned any time before then. I don't think, except maybe it was like in a book, and I missed the book. I'm not sure. I don't remember ever hearing about that before I spoke to you. I'm also happy that you are not mad at me for killing Photo. I know that was questionable, but I had to do what I had to do. He gave his life valiantly for the cause, even though it wasn't by his own. He didn't agree to any of it, but well, let's just move on.
All the inhabitants of Omikron are now awakened. The trusts have been destroyed. The last skirmishes are ending in the streets. We have had an extraordinary victory, which our descendants will recount from generation to generation, and we owe this victory to you, Nomad Soul. You helped us win back our freedom. For us all, you are now a legendary hero, like Cuchulainn before you. I shall try to take on material form again and leave this accursed network that has kept me prisoner for centuries. Thank you for all you have done for us, Nomad Soul. We'll never forget you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the battle that I had no idea that was going on. Like, I completely missed all that. I'm glad that that's going out well. It's turning out well. Your side is winning, like the people are on your side. I guess because of that mission I did where I attached, that box to the antenna and you got your message out there to the people, and now you've recruited everyone, and now their fighting is happening in the streets. And I had no clue that any of that was happening. I was just focusing on this whole demon thing, but I'm glad to see that you kept busy while I was doing my thing.
You have accomplished your destiny, Nomad Soul. Few men can boast of such exploits. You must leave us. Your soul is no longer in danger now that Astaroth is dead, but an extended stay in our dimension could cause you to lose your mind. The magicians you set free, Matambukus, and myself, shall bring our magic together to send you home.
Really? Playing Omikron for too long might cause me to lose my mind? How about that? You don't say.
My heart is sad to see you leave us now that we have achieved our goal. We will turn Omikron into a paradise, and your memory shall be engraved in each of us forever. Perhaps, in another time, another place, we could have loved each other and lived happily together. Fate has decided otherwise. I'll never forget you, Nomad Soul.
I know, I am pretty awesome. Like, everyone loves me. And Jen is saying, I want to jump your bones. It's too bad I can't, but I totally would. I'm clearly, like, the best person who's ever lived. I'm feeling really good about myself right now.
Use the Omikron program to come back anytime. We won't be able to see you, but you will be free to wander through our city as you remember your exploits amongst us.
Is that how it works? Like, if I wanted to play the Omikron again, what I would be seeing is like a replay. Like, that's the canon explanation. Like, it would be a replay of what I've already done, but I'm not actually interacting with you in the totally real world that you inhabit, because I already did that. Like, the game would just be replaying my exploits among you in your world. I guess that's the explanation for why you can replay the game.
Go now. You must go back to your own dimension and live out your own destiny. It will probably seem very ordinary to you, but always remember Omikron and the extraordinary things you accomplished here. Omikron gives you back your soul. Make good use of it. May Viagramuka protect your steps.
Yeah, it's gonna seem very ordinary to me, not having to play Omikron anymore. I don't know how I'm gonna find a meaning for my life, not needing to keep continuing to play this again. Oh, okay. I'm glad that they used that sound effect one more time for the end. Well. That certainly was a game that we played. Omikron, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, Quantic Dream and Dav Idka'j's first game. And it is completely different from their future games. Like, it's interesting. Why do they play that sound effect for the credits? It was never a good sound effect, and they just keep playing it here. Interesting thing about Omikron is that when you play this and you play their future games, their future games have pretty much nothing from Omikron. Like, no elements of what is in this game made it into their future games. Like, once you get into their next game, Indigo Prophecy, like, you can see when you play that. You can see that, okay, I can see that this is the starting point from which Quantic Dream started making these, like, cinematic, narrative-based experiences full of QTEs and such. You can play Indigo Prophecy, and you can see the through line to Heavy Rain, Beyond, Detroit. Like, that's the starting point. The interesting thing is that you play Omikron, and it's like, wow, their future games were nothing like this. Like, whatever design philosophy they had when they made Omikron, they just kind of threw it all away. I guess because the game did not sell well. Like, there was supposed to be a sequel. Dav Idka'j did want it to be a trilogy. But I guess it didn't do so well, so they figured, I guess they just decided to move on to something different. And Indigo Prophecy, I guess, worked out a lot better for them. So that ended up informing their design philosophy up to the present day with Detroit. But yeah, this game is absolutely nothing at all like what they would make in the future. And, it's extremely rough. I don't think I'm saying anything controversial to say that Omikron is an extremely rough game. Oh, hold on. Quantic Dream has special thanks happening. So, even though the game is incredibly, incredibly rough, it's like completely unpolished. Oh, and that's it. We ended it. It's done. Even though it's just completely unpolished, I enjoyed it, actually. I mean, there were certainly really bad parts. Primarily the first-person segments. It's like, at first I didn't mind the first-person segments, but then when we got to, like, the rooftop mission, where we had to broadcast the signal, and then we were in the Tetra Factory, where we had to plant the bombs, and then we were in Hamastagan, we were fighting the ghosts, and then the final boss, all of those first-person segments were terrible. I'm not going to try to even say that they weren't. But the rest of the game I enjoyed. Like, it had this real old-school adventure game quality to it. And even though some of the solutions to the puzzles were kind of weird, I did like how some of them had alternate solutions. Like the one where you had to put sleeping pills in your boss's coffee. Oh, it went to this. Hold on. Let me just... No, let's... I don't want it to keep going to that. Let's just quit. And we could just have David Bowie gaze at us while we talk. Yeah, the like some of the solutions had like multiple. Some of the solutions had multiple puzzles. No, that's the other way around. I keep doing that lately. Some puzzles had multiple solutions. Like when you were putting sleeping pills in the coffee, you didn't have to do that. You could take an alternate path where you make friends with the mechanic, and from there you control a mecha guard, and like that's an alternate path you can take. That leads to you getting an additional reward in the form of money. Like there were things like that, you know. The adventure elements I liked. The fighting system, I actually liked it when I got into it. I mean, it's nowhere near as good as an actual fighting game, but I did start to enjoy that once I got better at the fighting system. And honestly, I would have liked this game a lot more if the fighting system was the only combat that was here. If they just got rid of the first-person stuff entirely and then just made it so anytime you had combat, it was in the, it was in the fighting system. So the first-person segments really weren't good, and it's like I said in the last video, that clearly Quantic Dream had a much higher opinion of their first-person shooting than was warranted, because at the end, when you're fighting that last boss... Whoops, sorry, was interrupted for a bit. But like I was saying, the first-person segment really was not nearly as good enough to support what Quantic Dream seemed to think it was capable of. So like when you're going up against that last boss, it's easy enough before he speeds up. But the thing is, once he speeds up, at the end there, when I hit him, it was luck. Like, let's make that clear. I knew what his pattern was, and I would try to make him jump up, and then aim my gun in the general direction that I thought his weak point would be when he landed, and started firing. And if I was right, I would hit him when he landed. If I was wrong, I would miss. And if I missed, he would turn around instantly, because he was moving that fast. So really, that's what it was coming down to in the end. I'm going to shoot where I think his weak point is going to be. If I hit it, great. If I don't, I have to do this again, because I'm not going to be able to correct my aim. He's moving too fast. I have to just hopefully hit in the direction that I'm aiming before he lands. Like, that's what was going on there. And just to make it also clear, I mentioned that my controls, I was using the Steam controller, and I had mapped the mouse controls for first-person shooting to the right thumb pad. So my controls were, I would say, as good as they're gonna get for this game. Most people who played this game probably were doing so with controls that weren't as optimal. Like, if you were playing this on the Dreamcast, you would be using the Dreamcast controller. Obviously, mouse and keyboard would not be an option. So you would be controlling the first-person segment with the analog stick. And I'm wondering, if this boss was just as hard on the Dreamcast, how do you fight him there? What do you even do? And if you were using just a normal gamepad on the PC, it would be the same situation. You wouldn't have mouse controls. So I think that the setup that I made for myself with the Steam controller was the setup that was going to work as well as it possibly could have. And it still just didn't feel like I had enough control when going up against the last boss, or rather when the fast segment started. Because I knew what I had to do, and whether or not I would actually be able to execute on that was completely luck. Just complete luck. So that's what you were seeing there at the end, when he was just moving around really fast. Whether or not I hit him would be me aiming in his general direction and hoping that that would hit. I cut out a few attempts, like in the last video when I stopped there, and in the attempt you saw right now, I would say I tried 3 other times. So I didn't have to try that many times, really. Like, I wasn't at this all day or anything. But I felt that by the end there, when you get into his final fast phase, I felt that I just didn't have enough control. I just felt that what I could do in this game in the first-person segment just wasn't good enough for what that boss fight demanded. So I'm just glad that I got that over with. Aside from the first-person segments, though, like I said, I did actually enjoy the rest of the game. I enjoyed the adventure elements. I enjoyed the fighting game elements. And I'm wondering if maybe one reason that I liked it was because so many people were saying that this is like the worst game ever made. Oh, it's not. It's not. I have played so much worse than this. Like, maybe you don't realize that when you're watching some of these games, like The Ring. That was so much worse than this. The Ring was shorter, though. It was that. This game is also weird in that they clearly just ran out of money. Like, there are a lot of games in which that's the case, but it is really substantial and really noticeable here. Like, right at the very end, just how much money they didn't have to complete their vision. Like at the end, when you go into the undergrounds, okay, let me think about this. Let's break up the game into chapters. Like chapter 1 is Anakba, when you're Kale, you're in the police station. I felt that was pretty fleshed out. Then you go to chapter 2 is Jean-Per, where we join the Awakened, and I felt that was also pretty fleshed out. Like that ends with you defeating Namtar, exposing that there was a traitor in the Awakened, and then you meet Boz. Then you go to Lahora, and you barely spend any time there. Like, you think about that. You go to Lahora, you go to the library, you do the thing there, you meet the Awakened in their new base. Then you solve the puzzle where you get down into the well and get, like, the stone, the green stone, and then you leave. That's all you do in Lahora. You don't spend much time there at all. Then you go back to Jean-Per to go to Jangir Park, and then you go down into the underground city. So, at that point, what you do in Lahora is very short compared to the first two sectors, the first two quadrants. And then you never actually go to the fourth quadrant. Because there was Anakba, there was Jean-Per, there was Lahora. There was supposed to be a fourth quadrant. We saw the door to it in Lahora. I forget what it was called. But we also read about it in one of the books. And I assume that's where the government was. Because we certainly didn't see the government palace in any of the quadrants we were in. Then you go to the underground city, and it's this like big empty space, this underground subterranean city where the houses are carved out of stalactites, and that's a cool idea. And like the people there, the citizens, are like these genetically created beings that were shunned by the people on the surface. Sure, great, that sounds good. And then it's just like a whole lot of empty space and nothing in it, is what the reality of it is. And then you find out what you have to do next, and that's go to Hamastagan. And when that gets described to you, it sounds very big and very grand. Like the way it's described is, you need to get a sham to go on the journey to the necropolis, the city of the dead. And inside there is the Book of Naut, but no one knows exactly where it is. But it is guarded by 1,000 traps and spells, and no one has ever gotten out alive. That sounds real big. And then you do it, and the reality of it is Hamastagan is like down the hallway from the underground city. Like you move a rock out of the way, then you go down a hallway, and then it's right there. And the necropolis, instead of being a city, is just one room. It's like a large room, but it's still one room. And the book is just like on an altar on one side of the room, and instead of 1,000 traps and spells, there are just like a few dogs and some angry ghosts. It sounds a lot bigger than what it actually turns out to be. So when you hear the description of it, when you hear the description of it, that's probably what was going on in David Cage's mind. And then they just ran out of time and money and couldn't make that happen. So, and then at the end, when we go up into the palace and it turns out there was an armed revolution happening, the Awakened recruited like all the people in the city, and then they went and fought the government, and they stormed the palace and killed Reshef, who we never actually met. He was like the leader of the city. He was the guy who was kind of like the big human villain, and we never actually met him. We just found his dead body at the end. We also saw him watching us as we fought in the tournament, and then that was it. There was surely a lot... In David Cage's mind, there was surely a lot more happening there. That has to be the case. What we saw, how this actually turned out, couldn't have been what he was thinking. Like, there had to have been was probably like an entire second game's worth of content that had to be cut out of this. Because, wow. Like, I was saying, I wonder if, when I was playing this game, I was saying, I wonder if we'll meet Reshef. I wonder if we're going to encounter Ix. And technically, we do both of those things. After we defeat Astaroth, we find Ix. And it appears to be on fire. It appears to be destroyed, I guess. I guess Astaroth destroyed Ix and then was impersonating it. And then when we get up to the surface, we find like the palace has been destroyed and Reshef is dead and the Awakened have taken over. Great! I had no idea any of that was happening. Great, though. Huh. But even though a lot of this stuff was clearly cut out, even though the first-person segments were pretty bad, overall, I did enjoy the game, and now I'm thinking, which one did I like more? Omikron or Indigo Prophecy? And I'm thinking maybe Omikron. Because here's my thinking. Indigo Prophecy started out extremely strong, one of the strongest openings I've seen in a video game. And then the quality of the game as you go on drops off a cliff. It's like by the time you get to the end of the game, it is so bad. But the beginning of the game, really good. With you, like you have these multiple playable characters. One of the characters is accused of a murder. The other characters are the detectives investigating that murder. And so you're playing both of them on both sides. That's pretty good. And then it goes downhill. Indigo Prophecy has to be up there in terms of a game that goes down in quality over the course of the game. Like Indigo Prophecy has to be on the top of the list of that, I think. Near the top of the list. Omikron is more consistent in terms of quality as you go through the game. Now, you might say that level of quality is extremely bad. I know a lot of people would say that. But I would say that overall, I did like Omikron more from beginning to end than I did Indigo Prophecy. Indigo Prophecy could have been so much better than it was. Omikron, I feel like it fairly maintained its level of quality, such as it was. And the first-person segments were like the really bad parts, but everything else I kind of enjoyed pretty well. So I would say I think I liked Omikron more than I did Indigo Prophecy. Yeah, I think I do. I had an idea that I just wanted to look into. I started to think to myself, how old was Dav Idka'j when he wrote the story to Omikron? And I see that it says that the Nomad Soul was conceived in 1994. It seems that Dav Idka'j was born in 69, so that means that I guess he would have been 25 at the time when he started writing the Nomad Soul. And I was thinking, it's a little older than I would have liked, because I had this image in my mind of Dav Idka'j in high school, in class, not paying attention, just frantically writing his story down in his notebook. Because this strikes me as a real high school type of story. This is actually the kind of story that I wrote in high school, where I can imagine him just like going at his notebook saying, okay, so the main character in the video game is the video game player. No one's ever done that. You turn the game on, you get pulled into the game, into the sci-fi Blade Runner world. You have to solve a mystery, but then it turns out that the real enemies are demons. You don't see it coming. Combining the sci-fi environment with biblical imagery, imagine doing that. As like the demon, okay, so there's like an AI supercomputer that controls the entire city. But turns out the demon controls the computer. And then the demon is also the CEO of the big corporations in the city. So the demon controls the corporations, the demon king controls the computer, which controls the government. The demon controls everything, but you never see the demon. He's hidden, he's out of sight. The demons only show themselves when they're going to kill someone and take their souls, so no one knows about them. So that's like the thing that you uncover. That's like the mystery. As you go through the game, it goes from being like a murder mystery to, oh no, demons, and then you go to hell to confront them. It's so good, it's so good! You can like switch between people's bodies, like you're a soul in this other world, and you can possess people's bodies, and you are like the best warrior. All of the women wanna do ya because you're the best. Oh man, I gotta write this down. This is real good stuff. You meet the legendary hero who has the magic sword that all the sorcerers killed themselves, and all their souls went into the sword, and that's the sword they used to kill the Demon King. Man, I gotta make a video game of this one day. And he did. For all of Dav Idka'j's faults, he took this story and he made a professionally published video game out of it. And that's a lot more than a lot of us can say. Actually, when I was playing this game, I did notice some similarities between this and a story that I wrote when I was in high school. Specifically, the part about thousands of years ago, all the sorcerers killed themselves and their souls went into this weapon. And, like, I wrote a story where that happened, where, well, the weapons were gauntlets instead of a sword, and, like, the bad guys had one of them and the good guys had to find the other. So when I got to that part of the story, it was like, oh, huh, that's kind of familiar. But I never actually did anything with that story, but like I said, David Cage did something with his. I just feel that this is something that would have been written in high school while not paying attention to class. Kind of disappointed to see that he's apparently started writing it when he was 25. I feel that's a little too old. I feel like he should have been 15 when he started writing this story. But, I like how it says that the story was a 200-page document in the end, and it was deemed impossible to make a game out of. Because, man, how much did they cut out? How much did they cut out of this final game? There must have been so much that they had to delete. There had to have been so much content that had to be left out. Like I said, they probably had enough material to make a second game out of it if they were able to, but just didn't happen. It would have been interesting to know what the scope of the original vision was and how long of a game it was meant to be. Because it was already a fairly lengthy game, what we just played, and that was with stuff getting cut out, like the fourth quadrant, like the underground city not having anything in it, like Hammerstagen only being one room. I had a lot of stuff cut out. It still was a pretty lengthy game, so I wonder how long did he intend this to be? Did he intend this to be like a JRPG length game? Maybe this was going to be his huge epic. Oh, and actually something else that's very high school was the whole thing about having multiple genres in the one game. Because I know I had that idea when I was in high school. I know I had the idea of, okay, check this out. Let's say you're playing an RPG. It's like Final Fantasy. But then when you get into a random battle, it turns into Street Fighter. Why hasn't anyone done that? Why haven't any game developers made that happen? I am so much smarter than any of them. I should be making games. Look at this idea I had. It's so good. And no one else has done it. I'm so much smarter. Well, David Cage had that same idea, except he also threw in first-person shooting, and we see why game developers don't generally do that. It's because making a good fighting game and making a good FPS is a substantial investment and commitment, and those are their own games in themselves. Making a fighting game and a first-person shooter as the combat systems of your larger adventure game, you're not going to be able to commit all the resources you need to the fighting and the shooting. And maybe they're going to come out a little bit half-baked. Just a little bit half-baked. Still, I like the idea. It's just, well, like I said, I thought the fighting was kind of fun. The first-person shooting, not so much. But again, that's just that whole idea just strikes me as very high school, which is why I just like the idea of teenage David Cage writing this all down and swearing to himself that one day he would make this game happen. He would turn this into a video game. I just like to think that. Before we go and say goodbye to Omikron, there's 3 questions that had been sent to me that just sort of stuck in my mind. And this is kind of an obvious one, I think, something that we brought up near the end of the playthrough. But Anonymous says, I said this before, but holy hell, only David Cage could write this kind of fantastically awful and terrifying villain and not even realize they're a villain. What a waste of potential. Right? I mean, imagine a game in which you are just a normal person and it's like a horror game, and the villain is the Nomad soul, and it is just this amoral being who doesn't care at all for any people or anyone from your world, who will just possess people at random and just, screw around as them, maybe sell off their possessions, maybe kill their friends, and maybe kill themselves eventually and possess someone else. And you don't know who they are, but you know it's someone, and there's no way to stop them, really. And then you have to sort of research what it is, how this works. How could you possibly stop such a being? And it's like you have to kill the person who's possessed, but you have to make sure that there's no one around to touch the body. Make sure you wrap the body up so no one can touch it, and put it away somewhere that it can never be never found ever again. But you better make sure that the person you're killing is the right person. Who knows if it is? Yeah, the Nomad Soul is a completely terrifying villain, and it's amazing that there is no point at all in this game in which there is any kind of reckoning for that. Like, at the end of the game, everyone just comes out and says, "Congratulations, Nomad Soul. You are the best person who's ever lived. We all bow before you in our insignificance. We wish you could stay here, and we wish that we could be you. But you have to go." And, we did a great job. And I assume we would have gotten that same ending, even if I had possessed and killed everyone that we could. If I had just gone around the city finding everyone we could possess them, steal their stuff, sell off their stuff, kill them, and then possess someone else, I assume they would have just congratulated us all the same. Yeah, it's kind of amazing that no one ever brings this up ever throughout the course of the game. And that brings up another question someone asked me, like pretty much right at the beginning of this playthrough. Who is the most vile, morally reprehensible character you've played in a video game? Well, I didn't answer that question when it was asked to me, but I certainly have an answer now. It's 100% myself, the Nomad Soul, is the most morally reprehensible character I've ever played in a video game. Absolutely. It's hard to imagine a more evil protagonist than the Nomad Soul. And it's completely unintentional on Dav Idka'j's part. Like, most of the time when you play a game and you have a morally questionable character, that's deliberate. It doesn't seem to be deliberate in this case. It's like the game seems to be completely oblivious to just how awful you are. It's amazing. I would love to see Dav Idka'j and Quantic Dream return to the idea of the Nomad Soul. How would they treat that differently in the modern day? I don't know. But I think that we'll take a look at one more question before we say goodbye. It's not really a question, more of a statement. Anonymous said, "I'm on a rare visit with my mom, and since we have nothing to talk about, I told her about a David Bowie video game. Mom adequately tantalized. I pulled up your LP. We watched in silence until 1/4 through part 3, where she said, 'David Bowie's success is because of his acceptance of failure.' We bonded a lot. Thank you, SGF." So, it's just a reminder that even when you're playing a game like Omikron, it can cause people to bond. It can cause people to come together. It can cause people to spend some time with a shared interest, even if that interest is watching this incredibly janky video game featuring David Bowie, singing, and also sort of dancing, if you could call that what he was doing in his performances. Might be described as dancing. Might be. But maybe this is just a good note to leave this off on. Omikron can bring people together. Well, that's it for Omikron the Nomad Soul. David Cage and Omikron's first game. David Cage and Quantic Dream's first game. And David Bowie's only ever video game he was involved with. If nothing else, it was a memorable one. That's been this playthrough of Omikron, the Nomad Soul. Goodbye in Omikron.